Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elevate Your Business. I'm Ed Jurecki, and I'm excited to guide you through today's episode. It's designed to inspire and empower you on your journey to business success. Today, we're excited to have Katarina Kojic, a former advertising professional, a turned photographer, and improv enthusiast. She founded Hello Gorgeous, a company dedicated to empowering leaders and teams through unique experiences that blend portraiture and improv. Katerina believes that embracing vulnerability and creativity can unlock inner confidence and drive extraordinary results. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into her inspiring journey and the transformative power of authentic leadership. Katerina, it's wonderful to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me, Ed. Fun.
Absolutely my pleasure. I think you've got an awesome business, a great story. So to start with, could you share a little bit more about yourself and your business with our audience?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned I started in advertising, and that really was the beginning of my whole journey, which where you collaborate with a lot of people to come up with ideas. And then after I left my full-time job, I started doing improv and then discovered the collaborative benefits of improv. That would have been really helpful, but I had sort of a natural propensity for it while I was in the advertising world. And then also, while I started doing photo shoots to build my portfolio, I sort of approached it from the sort of advertising viewpoint of like understanding who you are, really like who's the audience, who are we talking to, what do you want photographs to say about you, what side of yourself are we showcasing. So, really, sort of having this 360 understanding of my subjects, which is sort of a unique thing because usually you're just a model and you just get photographed for the way you look and no one really cares about who you are. They just care about how the picture looks. But for me, for some reason, that it was just a big part of my experience in really being able to come up with something interesting for people that was unique and specific to them. So that really guided me into this journey on making portraiture very personal and effective. And also, I'm a New Yorker. Well, I lived in New York for 20 years. I think I'm allowed to call myself a New Yorker still. But in New York, you have very small apartments and everything has to have more than one use. So your oven serves as your shoe rack, as you keep your spare blankets in the off times. So I couldn't do a straightforward photo shoot. It needed to be lots of different things. So that was sort of the journey with photography. And then the improv got added to it when I discovered that working with me as a photographer really gave a transformative experience to my clients that really allowed themselves to be seen through someone else's eyes and to feel seen in a way that they maybe hadn't before and to sort of step into this vulnerable place. You have to sort of shed your skin and shed, I don't do boudoir photos, but for some people it might be shedding their clothes. But just sort of shedding the armor that people will naturally have about themselves when they are nervous. And that's a very big parallel with improv, where if you're not used to it the very first time you do it, you have a lot of armor on. So you have these go to security methods of either having to control or always being right or teaching somebody how to do something and just sort of maintaining an illusion that you have control of the situation, but really the secret is letting go and just see what happens when you work with somebody else. So they both had these sort of vulnerable and transformative qualities, and so I folded the improv into Hello Gorgeous as well, and started to see the results for teams going through it. So that's sort of the genesis of it. I could certainly talk a lot longer about it.
Talk a little bit about how you use this with teams and the results that you're seeing.
Yeah, with teams, we worked with hospital that had separate departments, and each department had control of their own budget, and then they were moving into a new phase where there was going to be one budget across multiple departments, and so they had to work with each other and trust each other that they would spend the budget in the way that would be most beneficial for the patients and for the departments. So that takes a lot of trust, giving people you don't know your wallet. You're not going to do that. So we did these improv workshops ahead of a bigger team building workshop that the consultants that I was working with did, that really brought everybody together and created a sense of shared vulnerability and shared psychological safety, where you're really creating an environment where it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to be wrong sometimes, because that actually sometimes creates an opportunity for something else. There's a million examples of mistakes that became invention that are huge sellers now. I think Velcro was one of them, maybe.
Post-it notes.
Yeah, post-it notes. So I think that when people start to see that, they can let go a little bit more, and then a little bit more and a little bit more. And so it works from the inside out. You first start to trust yourself that you are going to survive if you make a mistake. And then you start to trust others. So it had a huge impact. And the people that were the most skeptical, because there was a few people, it was a team of nurses that we did this with too. And some of the nurses were very straight laced and very like, we don't want to do any of this woo woo stuff, and had a very blind feeling about what this was. And they were the ones at the end were like, do we have to do the other work? Like, can we just keep doing the improv? Because it's just such a, it's such an endorphin kick that it really is addictive, that once you start doing it and you start to, it's like diving off a cliff or bungee jumping. You're jumping into the unknown. And then when you realize it's actually fun and you're going to be pulled back, or you're going to be supported by your team members, it creates a good basis for people who are in disparate factions of their business and bringing them together.
Outstanding. Have you had the opportunity to follow up with any of them to see if the trailing feeling of what they gained through the event is actually sticking with them?
I have only heard through the consultant that I was working with that they talk about it all the time and they reference it as like such a great thing. And I think that it also gives them a common shared experience that they can refer back to, like, oh, we'll always talk about the blue ball, which is a reference to an exercise that we do, or we'll always talk about, yes and super friend, and they will reference certain things that kind of become a guidepost for them to remember, like, oh, right, okay, yeah, let me be okay with making a mistake or letting the other person make a mistake.
Yeah, that is outstanding. The fact that it is sticking and they're using those little things. I used to, and I still do periodically, I run leadership learning forums. And that was a thing that I was looking to make happen, was not just the learning, the lessons, there's an internalization associated with it, but it's that common language, and then being able to get the team to have fun together, to joke together, and then remember and reflect back and poke at each other when, hey, you did this, or hey, you're doing this. And
Right.
so that is
Yeah.
an outstanding accolade for what you are accomplishing.
Absolutely. And I think with COVID and with more people being remote, there's less chance for the spontaneous water cooler chat where you will have spontaneous interaction with people on your team. It's all scheduled Zoom meetings and scheduled agenda meetings. So this also gives people that spontaneity back again, to have those kind of spontaneous interactions with each other.
Outstanding. So through your journey, how do you define success today?
Since we talked last week or a couple weeks ago, I've really been churning about this question, because I have defined it. I don't know that I ever defined it so concretely for myself in the past. I think I was always searching for what my definition was. And I think internally there's still an underlining subconscious feeling of, when I make X amount of money or when I have X amount of notoriety, that I will be successful. But I think I know very logically that that still isn't success for me. That success is really like, I'm not driven by making a lot of money. You go, oh, well, I have to have kids, I have to have a family, I have to be married, I have to have this much money. And I don't have those things. So it's sort of like, well, that's the big question then. Like, what does success look like for me? And I think for today, I really define it as, true connections with other people and finding joy.
Outstanding. And these journeys are never easy journeys. There's always challenges that we work through. What are one or two of the top challenges and the lessons learned that you can pass along to our audience?
Yeah, I think that a big one is really balancing creativity and business. So I'm very much an artist. I very much have ADD. So I have a lot of varied interests. And I think that is a big challenge when you're trying to run a business and you have to like deal with marketing and sales and operations and all these things that, how do you keep that straight? So I have built a lot of structure into my business. I have a lot of support. I have coaches. I have accountants. I have lawyers. I have like all the people that I need to lean on when I have the real questions of what to do next. And I think that is really a big part. Like my creativity is a big part of why I'm in business. It is what I am offering. It's what's for sale in a sense. So I need to be able to have that thrive, but also be able to still do the business side. So I think feeling like sometimes a split personality of like, all right, let's get down to business now, like, and being very serious and but also then when people meet me, they're like, wait, but we want the creative person. Like, is the creative person going to show up on the photo shoot, or is it going to be this like hard-nosed business person? And so it's a balancing act. And I think resistance in clients, like people are using the word improv as like sort of a red letter word. Nobody wants to do improv. They feel very nervous about it. They feel very uncertain for all the reasons that I said before, because you have to be vulnerable in front of people that you work with, in front of your boss.
Yeah.
So
Big change from the 1990s. Like,
yeah, I'm sure. And I have a lot of empathy, and my approach to my life and to working with clients is very empathetic and really like meeting people where they're at. And that's a big tenet of improv. It's like every day you're not going to feel super energized or excited, and that's totally fine. Like wherever you're at is where you work from, which I think is a real gift for some people, where they don't feel like, oh, well, you have to be on if you're going to do improv. You have to know a lot of pop culture references or even speak the same language. Like I had people in a class that I taught that English was not their first language, and we played a game called the alphabet game. So one was Croatian and the other was French, and they have different alphabets. They have additional letters in the alphabet. So they're going through this game. The game is where you have to say every next sentence begins with the next consecutive letter of the alphabet, and it's between two people. So you're going back and forth. And English speakers struggle with this. A, B, C, like they're counting their alphabet off on their hands to try to remember. And so if you can imagine, like one of the students, she was like, like there's like three C's, and so she's like really struggling with it. But I think that seeing her succeed at it, even though it was a struggle, gave so much permission to everybody else to just have fun with it and not make it be a really big deal. But again, like meeting them where they're at, like it's perfectly fine. You don't have to get it perfect. And I mentioned my ADD, that's been a big challenge for me. I was diagnosed really late in life. I was diagnosed in my 40s, and my whole life I've been putting different structures into place and different ways to remind myself so I'm not late to something. And I've had all these different strategies that I've sort of figured out, even down to like if I want to exercise. When I was living in New York, if I wanted to get exercise in, I was like, well, I won't have time, but if I walk from point A to point B, then I'll get my exercise in. So
yeah.
it was just like built in, and then I would not, like, you kind of set it and forget it, as they say. And so when I left New York, I had to refigure out all these strategies that had been just a part of my life on autopilot. And I had to figure out like, oh, how do I get my exercise in without having to like schedule a gym day or go to the gym early in the morning, which is not my propensity or desire. And it was a challenge. I mean, I got through it. I was taking care of my mom at the time, so it was like everything was tossed up in the air about my life. But that having my mom to be cared for also gave me a guiding post of like what was most important, and like it helped a lot of things sort of fall into place and other things just fall off the plate altogether.
So what piece of advice would you give those business owners out there that are so wrapped up in their business
Hmm.
and they're not necessarily having fun or allowing their creativity to kind of expand and engaging that as part of their business journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend an improv workshop. But seriously, I think that there needs to be some form of presence creating, whether it's meditation or yoga, an art painting class, something that works the other side of your brain. Because there is a lot of things that we're really good at and are on autopilot. And then there's the other part of us that gets ignored. And for a lot of businesses, it's the creative side of your people. And investing in that part of it is giving them an opportunity to discover something else that they're good at. And it allows them to be seen. That's the other secret to improv is that when you say something and I not only agree with it, but then add to it, which is called yes and, that's like the tenet of improv. When I yes and you feel great. You feel seen. You're like, my idea's just been taken and they're adding to it. And so you can slowly build together something. So businesses that aren't giving opportunities for their employees to be seen, for their team members to feel seen and heard and added to, are going to lose those employees. It's an employees market now. Like they can go anywhere now. People are wanting to hire people, and they're not putting up with as much as they did before.
Yeah, it's a pendulum swing right now. I think the top executives are pulling back on some of the freedoms that were gained through the COVID era. But at the same time, I agree with you that there's a major generational change that's occurring in here. The Gen Ys, the later millennials, and the Gen Zs will absolutely drive it. Their whole life's built around creativity and digital presence and being at the center of things. And yeah, there are definitely challenges from today's business world and ideals that have difficulty with those behaviors. But at the same time, I don't think those are going away. And I also see a tremendous amount of benefit. I mentioned the 1990s. I lost a job opportunity because I was wearing a black suit, white shirt, and red tie, not a blue suit, white shirt, and red tie. And so when I talk about the restrictiveness, and yes, generationally, you got the silence and the baby boomers, very little change really between them. And then the Gen X's, moderate change. And when you can look at the statistics between the millennials and the Gen Zs, massive change in comparison, relatively speaking. And it's the freedoms that have been allowed. Think about the mid 1990s, where tattoos, commonplace within businesses,
Right.
as one example. So I think that this pendulum swing is going to continue to go back and forth, especially while you've got more of the old school or older school thinking that's sitting at the helm of many of these organizations because it's about what they want, their outcomes, and they're molding people into what they feel is necessary to be a productive organization. And so, how is that going to manifest itself in this yin yang? Where's the balance exist? I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe it's going to pull towards that generational changes that will drive it. So, it'll be interesting to kind of watch.
Yeah, I think that people need to feel valued. They need to feel like there's a purpose. If you're not in a purpose driven business, then you need to feel valued in some other way. And some businesses have figured that out where they almost have you in a golden jail where it's like you could get your hair done, you can get a dentist appointment, you can go to the gym all within the same complex.
Mhm.
Not every business is going to be able to do that, but to show value that's not just financial, that is just the simple act of feeling seen and feeling valued in a conversation with somebody.
So, let's talk a little bit about innovation. How do you leverage innovation to drive your business and life success?
I mean, the biggest change for me, and this happened a while ago now, was just going from analog to digital for my camera and my workflow. Now it's like I can put somebody in a scene that I didn't photograph. I have a very mixed relationship with that. I think it's fun to do, like, again, I come from the background of being an art director and advertising. So I sort of look at images slightly differently than maybe the purist photographer would. I think that there is a lot of fun to be had in this arena of AI and using AI for imagery. I think that the thing that isn't going to go away is the experience that people have with another person being photographed. That is like a different level. You're not going to get that from an AI bot who's regenerating a photograph of yourself. But I do think it's a tool. I think it's something that everybody should learn, because you're just going to be left behind. It's like email. It's going to be as prevalent as email is. I remember there was like that old newscast where they're like, what it's at gmail.com .com like they were having this whole conversation on the Today Show about email. It was really funny. And I think, virtual meetings has become a really big deal. Like when I was just starting to do the improv in my business was just a couple years before COVID hit. And you're ramping up your business, and just right as you have all this stuff planned, COVID hits and you can't do any in-person facilitation. So I ended up learning how to do improv on, virtually through Zoom. It's not as good, but it's still beneficial and valuable. So Zoom has been it wasn't a huge innovation, I guess, because it existed, but everyone was using Skype. Like Skype missed out on such a great possibility.
A lot of them did, yeah.
Yeah.
GoToMeeting and some of the others, they're still used. Even Microsoft Teams is used, and they keep improving it. But Zoom has kind of become the standard. Most people that I interact with, more than 50% use Zoom, and the others use a combination of other things. But they're out there on the forefront of leveraging AI in a lot of ways, and it's a little easier and more intuitive than some of the other platforms. And part of it may be just getting used to them, but it is going to be interesting to see how that overall plays out. But I agree with you. I think the ability to do virtual meetings, but yet still see somebody, understand their body language, their facial expressions, it's much more personal than a phone call or anything else, email, of course. And yeah, there's still value to the handshake. But today's also incredibly challenging relative to how much we've got to do in the time that, there's only 24 hours in a day. And because of that, these tools actually become not just valuable from being able to meet people, but from a productivity perspective. Today, they're almost essential.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we wouldn't have this chance to talk and meet. This wouldn't have happened before. So I think it's incredibly valuable. Yeah. Just thinking of the other innovations that I would say, like DRM or marketing, social media, all those things, like as a photographer, those are really important to me, to be able to have people see the images in a way that it's like eye candy. It just becomes like a thing. And
Right.
for people to get more used to improv and to understand what that's about. And yeah.
Outstanding. So if there was one final takeaway that you could offer our audience that said, you really should consider this as part of your life and business success, what would that be?
I mean, the first word that floated to the top of my brain was empathy. It might be because it feels like it's my superpower, but I think that if people can put themselves in other people's shoes more often, and in that I mean like hearing other people's voices, hearing a diverse group of people's voices, dissenting and agreeing, I think is incredibly crucial to this world, and where everybody's trying to split people from one side to the other. In innovation, especially designing products and experiences, you have to think of everybody, and the only way you're going to be able to think of everybody is if you have other voices in the room speaking up. So I would say, yeah, empathy.
I love that, and I agree with you. And I think in some ways, for many of us, it evolves over time. Empathy does, because, of course, life is challenging for everybody. I don't know anybody, doesn't matter how much money you've got, what situation you're in, there's always challenges. If we learn from those challenges and then consider those and others that are dealing with things like that or worse, then it allows us to be much more empathetic. It falls in line a little bit with Stephen Covey's first seek to understand, then to be understood, because you're really trying to understand their situation, which gives you that opportunity to be empathetic first before just trying to drive to whatever agenda or outcome you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And that line from Stephen Covey is exactly what I'm saying when you're improvising with somebody, when you can agree with what they're saying before you're worried about them agreeing with what you're saying
Yeah.
and you're adding to it, they feel seen. And then that makes them able to hear what you have to say and add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts?
No, this has been really nice. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I really appreciate the time. I would love for people to contact me if they're interested in deep photography and CEO portraits and improv workshops for their teams. It's really fun and impactful.
And your website, what's the address?
HelloGorgeous.nyc.
Awesome. Outstanding.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us today with a special thanks to Katarina for sharing her insights and success tactics. We hope you feel inspired and motivated to tackle entrepreneurial challenges with innovation and adaptability. Remember, success is personal. Define it for yourself, but always remember, embrace change, seek growth, and adapt to the ever-evolving business landscape. Thanks again to Katarina and to all of our listeners, and we'll see you next time as we continue exploring more stories from incredible entrepreneurs. Stay resilient, stay innovative, and have a wonderful day, everyone.